Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. And as you can tell, the surgery went well. I was home by 3 o'clock and slept the majority of the day away. I'm not ready to do any kind of on-camera appearances as of yet or a live stream, but I just wanted everyone to know that the surgery did go well. My face is swollen. Thank you for everyone who gave me love and shout outs and everything. I do appreciate it. Before we jump into today's second half, though, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into tonight's second half, shall we? Also, the upload is pre-recorded, so you won't hear me sounding like this. Let's get into it. About a year ago, I moved my family and I to a home way out in the woods in Tennessee. I want to be brief here, but I need to get this off of my chest, and after looking into this matter a little bit more, I have a lot more details that I think will paint a clear picture in the end, so please bear with me. The nights here can be extremely loud. Between the crickets, the tree frogs, the cicadas, it's almost deafening. One night, not too long after we had moved in, I had forgotten something in the car. I headed outside to get it. The first thing that struck me as odd was that my dog wouldn't go outside with me. My dog goes everywhere with me, as I am her whole world. But not this night. As I held the door open, she looked out, then looked up at me like, nope. So I walked out and shut the door behind me. The second thing that caught me off guard was there was not a peep. It was dead silent. Still shrugged this off, walked down my front steps, and headed down to my car. When I got about 10 feet from the car, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt as though something was watching me. I looked around but saw nothing. After I reached into my car for what I had forgotten to grab earlier, I had the feeling like something was moving toward me. I took a step back and checked around me. All of a sudden, I heard one of the hedges next to me that lined the walkway to our front door rattle. At first, I thought it was a rabbit that I had spooked, as I had seen one just earlier in the day, right where I was. A few seconds later, I heard a sound of a large rock about the size of a cantaloupe landing a few feet away from me. It hit the walkway and bounced into a shrub. I drew my sidearm and called out, "Whoever is out there is about to be shot." After a few seconds of nothing, I began to think that maybe this was a local teenager messing with the new people. I holstered my sidearm, turned, and started to walk back to the front door. Almost as soon as I turned toward the house, I heard this deep panting sound. It sounded like a huge dog, but what made me note back to the front door was that it sounded like it was right behind me. I leapt up onto the porch, turned, drew my gun again, expecting something right there. But again, there was nothing. A couple of weeks later, I was on my porch at night, sitting on the bench with my wife. She got up and walked inside to get something, and as soon as she shut the door, I heard that panting sound again. couldn't see anything, yet this sounded like it was right on top of me. The sound was coming from everywhere, and it was very loud again. I couldn't see anything, so I noped it back inside my house. Now at this point, I was questioning moving here. But after nothing else really happened, I kind of let it go. A month or so later, it was really rainy and stormy night. It was around 9 p.m., and my wife and I were enjoying listening to the rain and talking about how relaxing the rain is. Me, growing up in Oregon, loved the rain, and for the past 10 years we lived in Vegas, where it would dump the entire year of rain in a day, then be bone dry for the rest of the year. My wife, who grew up in Nevada, rain was a rare thing. She loved going outside and watching the rain. So for us, this is an enjoyable experience. Except this night in particular, things took a weird turn. As we're sitting there talking about the rain and relaxing, my wife stopped me and said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "No, what did you hear?" She said, "I swear it sounded like a small child calling for help out in the woods beside our house." I said, "No, I didn't hear a thing." After a few moments of us listening intently, she said, "There it is again." I said, "I didn't hear a thing, sweetie. Are you sure you're just not hearing things?" She looked at me offended that I didn't hear anything and said, "No, I am positive." "How could you not hear that? It was our son. I think he's out there. He got lost." I said, "No, he's in the house sleeping on the couch." Then we both looked through the blinds that were open right behind us, and we could see our children lying there. She said, "That's so weird. I swear it sounded like our son." I said, "Well, it isn't him. He's right there. Besides, I didn't hear anything." She then stands up and says, "Wow, he's really crying out for help. I need to go look for him." At this point, if you knew my wife, you would know she is absolutely creeped out by the woods and wouldn't be caught dead walking into them during the daytime, much less at night during a storm. I grabbed her hand and said, "I've been listening intently, and there is absolutely nobody calling out for help. You need to stay here." At this point, I'm getting worried about her. She was acting completely out of character, not to mention, at this time she is 8 months pregnant with our baby daughter. She then says, "What if there is some child out there lost in the woods?" I said, "Well, first off, I would be able to hear them too. Secondly, there are no other kids around here for miles, and the odds of them being lost 100 feet from our house, that's lit up like a Christmas tree, is nil." She then says, "I know, but what if it's a kid?" Before I could say anything else, she stands up and starts walking toward the stairs. I jumped up and grabbed her hand again and said, "No, you're not. Get in the house. I don't know what's going on with you, but we need to get inside." She complies and we both go in. I didn't know what this was, but it freaked me out. A few months after this, just as it's starting to get dark outside, I heard the front door of our house open. I got up to investigate. We have autistic 6-year-old twins, and we have the door set up so they cannot open it without us there. So to hear this sound could only be my wife. What was weird was the fact that she usually doesn't go outside without saying something to me. I walked out front and saw my wife walking down our private road toward the drive on the side of our house. I asked her what she's doing, and she says she was sitting on the back patio and kept hearing a baby crying in the woods. I said, "Seriously, and you just decide to walk off into the woods and investigate?" She then looks out into the woods and says, "See, there it is again." Again, I can't hear anything. But what I did notice is that it was completely silent outside again. I told her, just like before, the chances of a baby being out in the woods outside of our house is slim, and that she needs to get back inside. She said, "What if someone left a baby out there?" I said, "Well, if that were true, I'd hear it as well." Now at this point, I'm really starting to worry about my wife's mental health. I actually asked her to see a psychiatrist, and she did. Now looking back, I feel really bad about this, knowing what I now know. A key to this moment was that my wife had just given birth to our baby daughter a month before. A few days after this, we're on the front porch. It was early evening. I had just mowed the lawn that day. Our 3-year-old son is riding around in his little car in the front of the house. Now, he knows he's not allowed outside of a certain area that we had mapped off. He loves playing outside. But with the road being 50 feet from our front porch, we have to be careful, as a lot of boaters will fly through after drinking all day on their boats. As we are talking, we are both keeping an eye on him. A neighbor drives by and stops and says hello for a second. This interaction took approximately 8 seconds, as all they said was, "How are things?" We said, "Good," and he told us he would stop by later as his wife got something for the kids, who happens to be one of the teachers in the school. And we said, "Okay, great," and he drove off. I looked over where our son was and he was gone. I called out his name and ran over to the side of the house, and I could hear his car on the side drive. I scolded him for leaving the area, and he said something in his 3-year-old gibberish and pointed to the woods behind our house. I told him that he had 5 seconds to get back to the front of the house or else. He adamantly pointed back in the direction of the woods and kept trying to tell me something. I looked off in the direction of the woods and just assumed he had seen a deer or a squirrel or something and wanted to see it up close. I walked him back to the front of the house and he cried the whole way there. He got really upset that I wouldn't let him go to the woods, but I wrote it off as him being curious, like most 3-year-old boys are. Now, this instance is not isolated, as our twins have done similar things, but not quite as extreme as this. There have been nights where we had just lied down for the night and heard a loud bang on the side of our house, on the wall behind our bed. It was so loud that I jumped up and looked out the window. Our floodlight had come on, but I could not see anything. Now, the weird part about this is that our bedroom sits about 12 feet from the ground level, as we have a full-sized basement that's cinder block. I put my slippers on and grabbed one of the 12 gauges and walked outside to investigate. Again, dead silent. The floodlight that's on the side of the house had clicked off at this point, so I walked over to the end of the deck and shined my light around the yard. There was nothing. I walked around the house and shined the light around intently. As I approached the back side of the house, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It felt like someone or something was watching me. I shined the light up in the trees, but again nothing. I rounded the corner, and the first thing I noticed was my 3 dogs that were in their area were not making a peep. Now our dogs have no filter and will bark at anyone and everyone. This includes me. So to see them all hiding with their tails between their legs, not making a peep, really had me worried. As I kept walking, all of a sudden the crickets and frogs started making sounds again. It was as if someone had clicked a switch. I walked back into the house and told my wife that I hadn't seen anything. She shrugged and said okay, as long as our dogs are okay. Due to the circumstances that night, I decided to let the dogs in and sleep with us. This very same thing has happened on all 4 exterior walls of our home. It's random and annoying, but just like this instance, every time there is nothing going on outside. There has also been times where we were sitting in the house and I was watching a movie while my wife walked over to me and said, "Did you call me?" I said no, and she said she swore she heard me call her name in her ear. She said that it was definitely my voice, but she didn't understand because it sounded so close, and I was a good 20 feet away from her in my recliner. The important part to this was that she was sitting at the table doing something, and the slider to the backyard was open behind her. Now our back patio sits about 20 feet off the ground, and is like a balcony with no stair access outside. I believe the previous owner had built it for a barbecue. There have been several instances where she has said she heard someone whisper into her ear, but she could not make out a sound. Again, I kept thinking she's going crazy, but as you will see, I believe it's all tied into one final moment where things are revealed. The last thing I'd like to mention before we get into what just happened is that I have a shooting range built behind my workshop on the opposite side of our property next to a main road. It is kind of on a downslope, but it works perfectly for what I need it for. The range itself is cut straight into the woods going down about 100 yards or so. When you're downrange, you have woods surrounding you on all sides except back up to the shop. I have to say, it's always felt creepy down there when I'm dealing with my targets or mowing. When you're down there, it feels like you're miles away from everyone. One day, 5 p.m., I was sighting in my new rifle scope. The sun was still up, but was starting to fade soon, so I knew this was going to be the final test. Up until this point, nothing really happened while I was making my multiple trips downrange, other than this feeling of uneasiness. As I got downrange, I kept getting this feeling like someone or something was watching me. I looked around but didn't see anything. As I was placing stickers over my previous shots, I heard something big off to my side. It sounded like a large branch had snapped off a tree. Now, if you've been in Tennessee woods, you will know that a lot of branches fall off of trees randomly out of nowhere, so this is nothing new. Except this time it was very loud and it sounded like fresh, strong wood, if that makes any sense. I turned and looked, but again couldn't see anything. I started walking back up to the rifle, and I swear I heard someone right behind me. I turned around, but again saw nothing. As I started to walk again, I heard this deep growl. It was really deep and loud, and what's worse is that it was all around me. I turned around facing the range and started walking backwards. The thought of some rabid dog charging out of the brush had freaked me out, so running was definitely not a good idea. I slowly walked backwards up the hill to my rifle, and nothing happened. I grabbed my rifle and sprayed the target with rapid fire, hoping to scare off whatever was stalking me. I left 10 rounds in the magazine and grabbed my rifle bag and quickly walked back up to the house. I never told my wife about this, as I did not want to freak her out. Fast forward about a year later from when we moved in, and my niece is staying with us as a live-in nanny to earn money over the summer for college. We were on our way back from the grocery store. About a mile from our house, I saw 2 eyes reflecting in the headlights coming from a wide tree on the side of the road just ahead. It caught my attention because they were higher than a deer, but different color and size. Just as I had said, "What is that?" and squinted, they vanished. I had made a comment that it was almost as if it had known I could see its eyes and moved. The color was a kind of green-golden color, but they resembled the mannerism of a large cat, as they felt ominous. It's hard to explain, but I shrugged this off as we were passing the tree and saw nothing. A few moments later, we arrived at the house. As we were getting the bags out of the car, my 3-year-old son came bolting out of the house, excited to see me. As I was waiting to help my niece carry the bags, I heard a dog growl. I looked in the direction she was looking at my neighbor's property across the street. Now, what I saw has kept me up all night. Up until this point, I have always been skeptical, as I had never seen anything with my own 2 eyes, even with what happened to me a year prior. I still had my doubts that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Now, my street is kind of spread out neighborhood. Each house sits on several acres, and at the end of our road is Kentucky Lake, near land between the lake's recreational area. My neighbor's house sits adjacent to my house on about an acre lot. Directly in front of my house is a wall of woods, and directly behind my house is several thousand acres of untouched forest. As I was looking across the street to my neighbor's property, I saw a large dark figure between the trees at first. The movement caught me off guard, as it looked like something large moving quickly on all 4s. Then, when it came out into clear view, it stood up and walked like a man. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. It was very tall. But what was strange about it was the distance it was covering, and the fact that when it was in front of his shed, I could swear I could see through it. It was clearly walking quickly, but moving faster than any person could at a sprint. More importantly, there was no sound. It was like it was phasing in and out of reality as it moved. I said, "What in the hell is that?" I realized that it was looking directly at us. It had moved at an angle away from us to minimize its time out in the open, and moving quickly as it could while still being silent. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized that whatever it was stalking us. I told my niece to get in the house now. I grabbed my son and booked it back in. I grabbed my AR-15 with a short scope and came back outside to see my niece still grabbing stuff out of the car. Knowing I told her firmly and clearly to get in the house, her disregard to my command annoyed me, but I watched over her without saying a word. As she was slowly walking, she turned toward the woods across the street from the house and suddenly bolted for the house. She ran up the steps in a panicked state. I asked her, "What did you see?" Her face was pale as a ghost. She said, "I heard something big in the woods, walking loudly on the leaves, and when I turned toward it, I heard a deep guttural growl." I asked her why she didn't come inside when I told her to, and she said she thought I was talking to my son. I told her what I had seen, and she wanted to get a closer look to see if she could see anything. I told her I don't think that's a good idea. She went anyway. As she walked down the walkway, I heard a sound on the dry leaves crunching in the woods across the street. I told her to stop and come and grab a flashlight. Now at this point, she's about 6 feet away from my wife's SUV. As she turned and started walking back to me, I caught a glimpse of something gray and hairy bolted behind the SUV back across the street into the woods. My porch is a raised porch, and our SUV is about 6.5 feet tall. And whatever this was, it cleared about 45 feet in what looked like a single jump. It moved like lightning. Whatever it was, it wanted my niece. It jumped behind the car out of my line of sight and was waiting for her. She still doubted my warnings and grabbed the flashlight and walked back toward the car. As she entered the driveway, she stopped dead in her tracks, leaned forward as if she could see something. I asked her what she saw. She turned and ran back up to the porch with a terrified look on her face, saying, "No, no, no," over and over again. She said it was a figure hiding inside of the tree and that she saw its eyes. I asked her what they looked like, and all she could say, they looked like a dull red at first, but as she got closer, they looked dead. I said, "What do you mean dead?" And she said that the pupils looked gray like the way eyes look when you go blind. She said it was really dark gray, and she swears she could see through it almost like a dark cloud. She wanted to go out again and took a step down the stairs, and as she did, it revealed itself from the tree. I said, "Get inside," and I went in and locked the door. It looked like a tall, human-shaped being. It was very tall and looked ominous. The next morning, we did a height comparison to the tree limb she had saw it stand over, and put its height around 9 feet tall, and its eyes were about 6 inches apart. At this point, I don't know what this thing was. After doing some research, I believe it could be a crawler. I looked to see if there had been any other sightings in Benton County, but nothing. More importantly, I swear it would phase in and out almost like a shadow person, but bigger and more ominous. One of the things that made this fit is that it can communicate telepathically. This explains why everyone was hearing something that nobody else could hear. Secondly, it has a playback-like communication. So when I heard a dog panting, it was probably one of my dogs that had heard. My wife was actually hearing our son crying for help, as he had recently fallen and cried for help. The baby crying would be our newborn baby, who she had given birth to recently, and it must have heard me call my wife's name and kept telepathically calling my wife's name with my voice. Another thing that my niece had said that night was that she felt compelled to go back outside to it. She said it felt like this thing was communicating with her somehow, and it wanted her to go back outside. The more I read about this thing, the more everything has been happening over the past year makes sense. One more thing I find even more convincing is that down the road toward the lake, there is a set of property with some barbed wire and a wall of forest with no driveway. A lot of that property down the road is undeveloped, owned land. And on one of the trees there is a large old sign that says "Screamer lives here," with an arrow pointing back into the woods. Now I have to admit, when I first saw this sign, I laughed, thinking maybe the owner screamed at trespassers who entered his property and the teenagers put a sign to mess with him. But when I did a satellite search of the neighborhood, that entire section of road has no houses or trails or anything, and it's just pure forest as far as the eye can see. One of the things that this thing is said to do is make loud screams when threatened. Now that you understand my experience, I doubt this is the end. Update. As I was sitting there at night, I did catch some strange sounds on camera, as well as when I passed an area with my flashlight, there appeared to be something. But when I came back to it, there was nothing. Again, due to the lighting, it is very hard to make out. I haven't felt comfortable going out since. My niece just came back from a week's vacation in Florida, so we plan to sit out there a couple of nights and try and see if we can get anything. This stuff has been happening for a while now, but it was random and far apart. Ever since this last incident, I have seen things that I cannot explain, but they seem to be happening almost on a daily basis now. Last night when my niece arrived, we went out the front porch to welcome her, and I noticed something that looked like a face staring at me. But what was weird was that as I was staring at it, it moved back into the shadow without moving, if that makes any sense. One thing that I would like to add in this update that I hadn't thought was connected happened about 2 or 3 weeks ago. My wife and I had been in an argument about something silly. She decided to walk back into the woods to clear her mind. I was on the back patio when I noticed her walk down our shooting range. I asked her where she was going, and she said to cool off. Now I know the chances of something happening to her are slim, but I found it odd that she would choose to go into the woods rather than simply walk down the road. I quickly got dressed and went down and tried to bring her back. I went to the end of the range and called out her name. After a few minutes of calling out, I heard nothing, not a peep or a twig or anything. Now the weird part is that it is impossible to move around these woods without making a sound, especially for her. I was worried that she was walking too far, but I had to get back to the house because our kids were alone. It freaked me out because it was as if she had just vanished. I went back to the house and debated calling someone, but figured I'd give her a little more time. I went back to the patio and waited. After about an hour, I started to get very worried. I called out her name again and decided that I would call if she hadn't returned in an hour and a half mark. After another 20 minutes went by, she came walking back out of the woods, angry that she had worried me so much, yet also relieved. I asked her what she was thinking. She said, "What?" She walked back into the house. She came in and looked at me like I was crazy. I said, "Didn't you hear me calling your name to you?" She said she only heard me once, and she had replied. Now this is where it gets crazy. She said, "I've only gone for about 15 minutes. Why are you so freaked out?" When I told her that she had been gone for an hour and 20 minutes, she did not believe me. She also said that when she went down there, she didn't go very far. But when she turned around, she started walking and got worried that she had been lost. She said she didn't recognize where she was, but something told her to keep walking. She said it felt strange, and that the air had felt different. When she came back out of the woods, she was relieved to see the house. Now the part that upsets me the most about this was that where she said she was. It's impossible. I was literally standing 20 to 30 feet away from that spot. If she had been there, not only would she have seen me and I'd seen her, but she could have talked to me in a normal voice. More concerning is that you can see the house from this spot, and how she felt lost is just mind-boggling. I don't know what this is. I thought that again she was losing her mind, but I feel that what happened to her is real. I plan to go back to where she was with her to prove that you can see the house from there. But I want her to show me exactly where she went, as well to talk me through everything. I know some people have to be thinking I'm crazy, but I promise that I will do whatever it takes to get proof and keep you updated till I figure this out. Next update. Weird things have been happening. Today my 3-year-old son is playing on the back patio a few feet away from us, and all of a sudden the dogs inside jump and start barking. One of our dogs, Duke, that was on the patio with him, comes bolting into the door. I jump up to see what's going on, and my son is pointing to the tree line saying, "Werewolf, Daddy, werewolf." Now my son loves watching videos of werewolves for toddlers for some reason. I would normally put this off as nothing, but if you saw the look on his face, you would know he was serious. Plus, the way my dogs react, he had to have seen something. I pulled out my phone and began recording. He kept saying, "Daddy, look, like a werewolf in the bushes." I tell him I can't see anything, but I can hear something really big in the trees. Next update. I have a lot on my plate. My niece quit. She said she cannot handle all of the stuff that has been happening. Everything was fine for a while. She kept indoors for the most part. She went onto the porch one night with a flashlight and a camera hoping to catch something. We kept hearing things in the brush, which could be anything. After a while of not seeing anything, she went back inside. I said my prayers, then slept like a baby. My niece, however, did not. She woke up late the next day and seemed a bit jumpy, and I asked her what was wrong. She said she didn't sleep well because something was outside of her window. I took a bit of prodding to get her to talk about it. She said she could hear something big outside of her window, but every time she looked, she couldn't see anything. She said she heard weird noises that she could not describe. She came out to the living room to see if I was still up, but I was fast asleep. She decided to go back to her room and go to sleep watching some YouTube on her phone. She said she was almost asleep when she felt something standing right behind her. She turned around and there was nothing. She said she kept having the feeling, but brushed it off as her imagination. That was until 3 a.m. when she woke up. She said she had her phone in the window still playing a video. She had the same feeling as before, but this time it was very intense, like whatever it was, it wanted to devour her. She turned around quickly and saw what looked like a shadow disappear into the wall in a blink of an eye. She told me this kept happening until she passed out late in the morning. I told her that was weird, as we have never experienced anything like that in the house before. We have had weird things happen, like things disappear for a while, then reappear days or months later in the exact spot they were last seen. She said it felt like whatever it was, it made her feel like it wanted to hurt her. I told her to keep me updated and let me know if anything else happens. A few days later, she asks if she can use the hot tub that's out back. I explain that it's off as we can't afford to heat it. When we get over to it, I open it to look inside. To my disbelief, not only is it on, but the water looks great minus a little cleanup, and that needs to be done. As I'm walking around, all of a sudden I hear this really loud thud behind me, like a log falling onto the ground or a large boulder hitting the ground. Imagine an engine block falling 20 feet onto soft soil. It made me jump. I turned around and didn't see anything, as the brush is too thick. I kept helping her work on the spa. Then she says she's going to go inside and get changed so she can get in. I look around and realize that it's getting dark out, and I really don't want to be out here. I bend over to work on getting the filter cleaned out, and I hear what sounds like something big snapping branches and charging at me. It made me jump, then run to the back door. I turned around to see what was there, and there was nothing. I walked into the house and walked upstairs and told her I had heard something out there. She looked at me for a minute and then said, "Well, I want to get in and relax." She asks if I can leave the back patio door open, so if she needs me, she can call. But according to her, she enjoyed the spa without any incident. Every day I notice her getting more and more anxious and less willing to talk about it. She says every night something new happens to her, but when I ask her to elaborate, she refuses. A few nights later, I walk out on the porch and notice it's dead quiet again. I ask her to come out onto the porch with me, but she says she's tired and wants to call her boyfriend and go to bed. My wife gets up early and takes care of the kids, and it's my job to handle night shift. So she's in bed at this point. I decide that I don't have the guts to do this alone. So I put a movie on and relax in my recliner. I end up falling asleep and wake up at 3 a.m. to a noise coming from my niece's room. It sounds like a deep voice. I knock on the door. I call out several times and get nothing in response. I figure it must be her video and decide to let it be. I head to bed, and just as I start to pass out, another bang happens. I wake up and hear what sounds like something skittering on the outside wall of my bedroom. Understand that this is way up in the air and physically impossible. I look out the window and don't see anything. After going out and checking on this bang multiple times over the last year and seeing nothing, I decide to forget about it and go back to sleep. The next day, my niece comes out and tells me that she had the shadow thing happen again, except this time she had left the light on. She said she woke up to the feeling again. She said that she opened her eyes and she could see an extremely tall shadow figure standing over top of her. She said it was moving closer to her, and just as she started to see the details of its face, she turned around in panic, but nothing was there. She said the eyes haunted her, but didn't want to elaborate any further. The next morning, for the first time ever, my niece was up bright and early. I noticed she looked anxious as she told me that she was heading home for the 4th of July weekend and would be back Tuesday. I asked her if she was okay, and she said yeah, and quickly walked out the door. Later that day, I get a call from my sister telling me that she's not coming back. I ask her if everything's all right, and she said yeah, she just wants to enjoy the rest of her summer. A little while later, I get a call from my niece telling me that she doesn't want to work here anymore, as she cannot handle the anxiety from whatever is out there. She does not elaborate more than that, but whatever has been going on in her room has her petrified. I checked on her room and noticed that she had been sleeping with one of the windows wide open. This window is perfectly accessible from the outside. I don't know if what's been going on with her, but it looks like it could have been coming into her room. Fast forward to 4th of July. I do fireworks out in front of our property by the road facing the woods. Due to what's been happening at night, I decided to do them prior to it getting dark outside. We do our fireworks, and just as it starts getting dark, I get everyone inside. After a couple of hours, I remember that my hose is still on the ground, laying out by the road. I head out to clean everything up and put the hose away. While I'm doing this, I notice that it's dead silent again, minus the distant sounds of fireworks. The hairs on the back of my neck go up and I get the feeling like I'm being watched again. I hurried and coiled the hose and ran back inside. I swear I'm starting to wonder if it's just my mind playing tricks on me at this point. That is the last update for right now, but they have had some really terrible dreams as of late, and they're going to share one with us right now. This would be the wife is having some pretty terrible dreams. I've always had extremely intense dreams, well, more like nightmares. I've even had night terrors on some awful days. Now I've had many dreams that really hit me when I wake up, but the one I'm about to share has really gotten me. So I had this dream 3 days ago, and I'm still thinking about it. In the dream, I was at some kind of campground that had bedrooms for people to sleep in. I don't know, and don't ask. There I end up meeting these guys who are between the ages of like 14 and 18. There are 7 of them. I'm with someone that in the dream I seem to know, but in real life I have no idea. We get this idea to start taking a metal pipe and begin smashing them on the head one by one. Now, this isn't the first time I've had these dreams like this, violent. What makes this one so different was it was like I was actually there, versus normally it's like I'm watching a movie and seeing myself do things. In this specific dream, I could literally feel the bones crack and the sound of pipes hitting their heads and face. It was awful. Now, after we are done, we are thinking about what we have did. So we begin to leave. Well, it turns out that they're not dead, and now we're being arrested. The part that was the worst for me is that in real life I have severely autistic twins who are nonverbal and will never be able to move out. In the dream, one of the boys I hit ended up with brain damage and became like my more severe son. The feelings of regret and despair set in, and all I wanted was to take it back. Well, before I went to jail or anything, my husband got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, which, thankfully, caused me to wake up. I woke up so startled I was crying and sweating and felt so much remorse. I then realized it was just a dream and get up and have a cigarette because it messed me up that bad. I don't know why I had this horrible dream, but what I can't explain is how I was able to feel and hear everything, even though I've never hit someone over the head. And no, it was nothing like the movies, in case some are like, well, maybe you got it from that. So yeah, I tried talking to my husband about it, but he doesn't like listening to my dreams because they can be either extremely violent or extremely sad. Like once I dreamt my baby brother, who was 5 at the time, and I was 20 something, had a bomb vest put on him, and I couldn't disarm it. So I just sat there and held him until it went off. And there you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed tonight's second half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we all deserve, and I do appreciate that. Thank you. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real, they are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.